Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Here we go. You dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted you're with us today. We broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Nathan is engineering the broadcast at GCN in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. Captain John Regan's with us. Welcome, Captain John Regan.
Good morning, Vincent.
Hey, good morning, John. Hey, John, if our class would like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. And class, if you'd like to travel and bring us with you, 605-477-3249. That's the listen line, 605-477-3249. So, Captain John Regan, what's new in your world?
That might take more than the 2 hours we have. I've got a lot of health-related items up for discussion today. If you're looking at the post on the financialstateoftheunion.com, before we get there, there's a few of the news items I'd just like to touch on. And as usual, there's going to be a lot still left on the plate when we're done. Some of the things we're not going to talk about. In the Fukushima section, we've got not only the radiation this week, but he's also been doing another series on radiation from 2006, which is from before Fukushima. So we've been irradiated longer than what we've believed. So that'll give you some additional reading to go on. And let me start with the spy tech section. I've got an article there that information that came out of the Google I/O conference. And Google is going all in with artificial intelligence. And what they are now saying is that in image recognition, the vision error rate for the computer is now less than that for humans. And I believe the speech word error rate is getting into that same area as well. We tend to think of human being perfection, but that's not the case. We don't get everything right. There's, whether it is visual or audio, we make mistakes. And the same is true with their artificial intelligence, just now they're at the point they're making less mistakes than we do. I find that a bit disturbing. How about you?
Oh, absolutely. And, sometimes we don't recognize people. I didn't know that was you. And yeah, we do make mistakes. And I mentioned that I was at the Chinese factory outlet, John, and within a half hour's ride from our farm, and I was in the self-checkout, and there's always somebody watching me. There's always some person watching my every move to make sure that I don't put more items in my cart than I paid for. And I found out that after talking to those people, those watchers, who are employees, and making sure that everybody gets the items they paid for and no more, I asked them about theft. Why is there so much attention being paid? And they said, well, that's the highest theft area in the store. The highest loss area in the store is where they have these self-checkouts. However, they're putting more and more self-checkouts in. So it used to be at Sam's Club, which is under the same umbrella as Walmart. you could find 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 maybe self-checkouts, but they're expanding the self-checkouts there as well. And they also have watchers watching those of you who are checking out. But the thing now is that they have facial recognition cameras at the self-checkout. So while you're scanning your items, you have been recorded, and facial recognition knows who you are, and that information is sent to the agencies, the government. So if you're on the run, it's a bad place to go. If you think you're going to go to a self-checkout and not be recognized, the answer may not be that. You may actually be recognized and be arrested, in the parking lot or at the door or while you're still checking out. So you're right. We are using artificial intelligence for all kinds of things. I don't like it. I don't like being tracked and spied on and so forth. So the answer to me is we need to use more cash, because if you go to one of those Walmart checkouts and you use your credit card, well, they now know for sure, absolutely for sure, that that's you, because you used your credit card and they've just got your image and lots of different angles of your image, from above, from the side, from the front, looking up, looking down. They've got you. So that's a real problem, and I don't like it, John. And what do we do about it? I don't know. Wear disguises. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. But the official pictures that they take of me, the state-mandated pictures, I'm doing everything to not open my eyes. So I have, for sure, a driver's license with my eyes closed. And 5 years from now, when they want to do another one, I'm probably going to close my eyes again. It's a problem. I don't know the answer, John. I really don't. I want to stay home. I don't want to go out. I don't want to be subjecting myself to arrest just because some computer program says, it thinks that I thought something that I shouldn't have thought, and arrest me for it. I don't like it.
Skipping on down to the bigger picture, the top one, going critical. There's a supervolcano in Italy. If you look at a map, the supervolcanoes to the northwest of Naples, and then Mount Vesuvius is to the southeast. So they're kind of surrounded there. And unfortunately, this supervolcano, or the area around it, is showing signs of heating up. They have had, I believe, a 3-meter rise in the area there. I don't remember what time frame. And if that goes off, it's that's not good for everybody. I did a measurement that's just 50 miles from Rome, and one thing I did learn in researching this, there's the supervolcano scale that goes up to a magnitude of 8, and Yellowstone is one of the ones that's in the 8 category. This one is a 7, so it's almost as bad as Yellowstone can be. So if that goes, then we'll probably see something similar where you'll get a ton of volcanic ash in the air, and I guess we just have to wait and see how much that would reduce the temperature and the sunlight, but it would definitely have an impact worldwide on agriculture, and of course it'd be very bad for people living near the supervolcano there in Italy, and who knows the surrounding area in the Mediterranean and Europe. Vincent.
So John, I believe what you're saying is that for agriculture it would be a negative because of the dimming effect and the dust that would circle the globe for a while, right?
As well as the lower temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Because crops are expected to be a certain temperature to grow.
Mm-hmm. And according to the article, this volcano has been relentless for 67 years. 67 years. But there was a similar occurrence when it took 500 years ago, when it took a century to build up to an eruption in 1538. So this is considered serious, as you've said. So we need to keep watching it. But what do we do, John? I don't know if there's anything, in the United States here, there's nothing we can do. except make sure that we are prepared for all eventualities, right?
And that's what we've been talking about for years. You need to have a plan which includes food, and some of that's, storing food, and whether or not a year would be long enough, we just don't know.
John, when you studied finance and economics, at the formal level, did you ever study something called random walk? Did that term ever come up?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, interesting. So let me just share this from memory from the 1970s. So random walk refers to, at least as I've been taught formally, things are going along just fine, and you can predict trends based on, or you can try to predict trends based on historical information if that's what you care to do. But then something happens, something totally unexpected, which throws everything into disarray. Let me give you an example. Everything was fine until President Reagan was shot. And then there was concern, and the markets reacted and so forth. That was like an event that was unanticipated. I mean, yeah, sure, could it happen? Yes. Did anybody expect it to happen that morning or that day? No. Well, so in our lives, in terms of preparedness, if you look at what we think, and if you look at what doomsday preppers would tell you or used to tell you, so what are you preparing for? An earthquake, a solar storm, floods, a power outage. They pick one. The contestants, if you will, of doomsday preppers would pick one. Well, we've never really picked one here at USA Prepares. We just say, all these things can happen. And we don't know if or when or they'll happen, but we need to prepare for all of them. And so a few days ago, we weren't even thinking about volcanoes. And here we are. Could that be a random walk event? That's the question. Think about that, class. We'll be right back. Captain John Regan's with us. And John, a random walk is a hypothesis, a financial theory that states that stock market prices evolve according to a random walk and cannot be predicted. And it says that this is the Wikipedia definition. So a random walk is a hypothesis, financial theory stating that stock market prices evolve according to a random walk and thus cannot be predicted. It is consistent with efficient market hypothesis. So that's what I said. Something can happen and change. Everything's going up, and something happens that is unexpected at that time and makes a massive change. So we were talking about the volcano. Everything's fine. We've got Donald Trump as CEO, and things are looking really good. And people forgot about preparing, why they need to prepare. But now we have a volcano to put in the mix, and that could change everybody's day worldwide. Very good point. Thanks for bringing that up, John.
And if you want to research further, you can type in "year without a summer," and you can read about what happened in 1816. That was the result of the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia in April of 1815. In 1816, known as the year without a summer, was part of a 3-year period where the climate had deteriorated globally because of that eruption, with 1816 being the roughest part of that. So it's not an extinction level event, but it's definitely a big interruption in normal lifestyle.
Well, John, there's an article in USA Today, just as you said. I did a search on it as you were mentioning it, and it says 200 years ago we endured a year without a summer, snow in June, freezing temperatures in July, a killer frost in August. The most gloomy and extraordinary weather ever seen, according to a Vermont farmer. And 2 centuries ago, 1816 became the year without a summer for millions of people in parts of North America and Europe, leading to failed crops and near famine conditions. So, class, have you thought about your food, and have you thought about your garden, and have you thought about canning, and have you thought about, putting provisions away so that you can survive? Should this happen again? And John, here's the problem. It's like cry wolf, right? How many people have been preparing, and for how long have they been preparing? And how many of them can say, you know what, nothing happened. Nothing happened. Everything's been fine. I submit, class, if you're preparing and you have extra food put away and you've got your water and you've got your salt and you've got some medical supplies and you've got tools and you've got books and you've got a way of generating some electricity. Worst case, if you rotate your food, you just have to eat it. That's the worst case. If you prepare carefully and you buy what you eat. Now, you can waste money by buying things you don't eat, but if you're judicious, worst case is you'll just have to eat it. And you'll probably eat it at a lower cost, lower price than you'd be eating it if you bought it now. John, your thoughts on that?
Well, even if you don't have a mortgage on your house, which that's a small number of people, you'd probably still want to have fire insurance. It's not that you want to have a fire, but if it happened, that would be very catastrophic for your life. Mm-hmm. And I can also use an example. I've been driving more than 4 decades. I've needed a seatbelt exactly one time. But if you wait until the accident starts, there is no time to put on your seatbelt. It's ready or not.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. I cannot imagine operating a vehicle on the road today without a seatbelt. I mean, I always have my seatbelt on. Always. And so does everybody else in the vehicle. If I'm behind the wheel, everyone else has a seatbelt on as well. It's just required. Captain John Regan, I'll be right back. This is USAPrepares.com. If you'd like to follow along in class with us today, you can go to thefinancialstateoftheunion.com and click on the news tab, and you can follow along with the links and see exactly what we're talking about. We'll be right back. Captain John Regan's with us. John, kind of a somber note on today's broadcast. Do we have any good news?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Well, moving down the bigger picture, I've got an article that talks about how United States hypersonic aircraft will not catch Russia flat-footed, but that's not what I really want to talk about. It gets into how fast these things really travel, and it's in the neighborhood of 3 miles a second. So let's just say somebody decides to put a hypersonic missile on this side of the planet, whether it's on a naval vessel or on a merchant vessel inside a container, or they import it into Mexico and they decide to launch that. And it's hard to say whether that would be one of the big states, Russia, China, one of the crazier smaller states like Iran and North Korea, or if it would be a terrorist organization. But the results make it to the point where it doesn't matter. And we've talked about how just one of these exploded 300 miles over the middle of the United States would pretty much take out all the electronics and the grid for the entire United States. So to achieve that altitude with the hypersonic vehicle, we're talking about roughly 100 seconds, just over a minute and a half. That is not a heck of a lot of time. And you think if the satellites do detect the launch, then they have to go through the process of verifying, and they also are looking at where the target is, which, of course, in an EMP attack, the target's not a city, it's just to gain altitude. And at the same time, they're working on contacting the president so that he can decide what retaliatory option he wants to do. And if it's, again, from a container from a ship off the coast or from missile smuggled into Mexico, It's kind of like, who would you respond against? And in that amount of time, there is no time to even alert anybody. When I was at the Pentagon working on the nuclear planning system, I was very aware of what was going on. We had a Russian submarine off the east coast of the United States, and if it had launched its missiles, they would have been arriving in D.C. about 10 minutes later. And it's likely I would have never known it was on its way, because in the amount of time that it takes to just do what needs to be done to mount the retaliatory strike, there would be little time to notify anybody else. They probably wouldn't even get on the PA to make an announcement at that point. And even if they did, what would we do? We couldn't even get to our car in the parking lot in that amount of time. And if we did get to our cars, how would we get far enough away to make a difference? So it's, it's not a nice thing to think about, but it's like I've talked about before. When you're working in that nuclear arena as your job, you have to deal with some pretty distasteful options on the table. Vincent?
As you were saying this, John, I was thinking about, so the communication could go like this. And in my mind, I see, one guy at the screen saying, "Oh man, look at this. Look at this." So now he calls the person next to him over. Now the two of them are looking at it. They've just burned 10 seconds, right? 10 seconds of less than 2 minutes have been burned. Then they decide together, it looks real. And they go to communicate with the president. How long does that take? Let's say they bypass all chain of command, they go right to the president. And by the time the explanation is given to the president by the guy who saw it first on the screen, the device detonates, and then all communication's lost. Right? Isn't that how some of this could go? Or does our government have such a great communication system that it would stay up during an EMP? I can't imagine that it would.
Well, in theory, military systems are hardened against such, but even if all that is successful, the damage to the United States has already been done. The question is whether or not we could get off the retaliatory strike. And with the scenario I just described, it's like, who would you retaliate against? It's kind of like the James Bond movie where, this, circus troupe smuggled a nuke into a American airbase in Germany, and the dialogue was, why would you do that? The Americans would retaliate. And the villain says, against whom? Because the thought would be is that in that scenario is that there was an accident at the American airbase. And if it's coming from a ship, you even if you knew where the ship last came from, you don't even know where the nuke got on. If it was smuggled into Mexico, what are you going to do? Nuke Mexico? So I'm sure they've worked through these types of scenarios. I just can't give you a good answer as what they would do. But it definitely takes more than a minute or two to go through that process. And with an intercontinental ballistic missile, you've got roughly a half hour while it's traveling to make up your mind. For the sea-launched ballistic missiles, you've got 10 or 15 minutes. But for a hypersonic missile, probably even a regular missile where you're just trying to gain 300 miles of altitude, that's just not enough time to do anything.
John, is this one of your most significant concerns?
It troubles me greatly because it doesn't take a Russia or China to do this type of attack. We've got that an insane location in North Korea where I read time and time again in the mainstream media that, they're not a threat yet because they don't have a missile that will, reach the United States. Well, they don't have to. All they got to do is be able to load one onto a freighter. And the disruption is, horrific. And I've gone through, this is essentially a near extinction level event because the supply chain crashes. We don't know how to raise our own food. We're not doing it already. Even the Amish, who are living pretty close to that type of lifestyle, are dependent on the supply chain. But at least they've got a lot of decent skills and the community to do it with. The rest of us, it's like I said with the accident, it's too late to put on your seatbelt when the accident started. Once that nuke goes off, it's too late. You can't get online and order your supplies. And then beyond that, you need the skills to be able to use it. And if you want to, wait and see what's going to happen, it's too late. And it takes time to develop this. So,
John, you're talking about the Amish. You can talk about the Mennonites as well. In our little village here, we've had some Amish move in. And when I go to the farmer's supply, the local farmers cooperative, the Amish are there. They're buying their seed. They're buying their feed. They're buying, tools. They don't make everything. So the Amish, we may think that they're, 100% self-sufficient. The answer is they're not. They use bowls, they use knives and forks, and they use hammers and saws. They don't make them. I don't make them. We buy them. We buy them from companies who can specialize in making them. So we are not islands. It's darn near impossible to be 100% self-sufficient. It is impossible. We're all dependent on others for something. So even the Amish, if we think that, we'll just go over there, they're going to be fine, they're not going to be fine. They're going to be a little better off than the average guy. But they're going to have their trials and tribulations as well. They don't make their own clothing. They don't make their own cloth. They buy it. They buy kerosene. They heat with wood, but they don't make their own axes. They don't use electricity, many of them, but they're still dependent on machinery. And
they don't use electricity in their homes, and you have to understand when you talk about the Amish, it's not one group. Each group has different rules, but often what you will see is outbuildings that have electricity run to them. And for example, the Amish farm that I was on, they had an outbuilding where they had freezers and a telephone line too. And then they had another outbuilding that was the water well, and it didn't have any kind of backup to it. If the power was out, there was no water.
And we brought some Amish in to give us a hand here on the farm, and they were using a saw, an electric saw, and I said, "What are you guys doing?" I thought you guys... No, we can use it as long as it's not ours. We'll be right back. Captain John Regan's with us, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com. Shortcut to get there is EZE33.org, EZE33.org, and click on the news tab, and you can follow along with us in class today. John?
Let's see if I can go over the last two articles in bigger picture in the time we have left this hour, going after the new oil and graphene in the news again. I found this article from 2013. The largest known rare earth deposit was discovered in North Korea. And you think about all the wars we have participated in because of the oil in the Middle East. And isn't it curious that we're talking war with one of the most important series of minerals that we need in today's society, the rare earths that North Korea has in abundance. But there is the flip side of that, we've been talking about graphene for the last month or so, since they found a way of manufacturing it inexpensively. There are so many applications, and one of the things that would make that even more valuable is being able to recharge quickly. And apparently there is a way of doing that with graphene, creating ultra capacitors that would store the energy and be able to be quickly recharged. I suspect over the next couple of years, we are going to see such an inflow of new graphene-based technology products that it's going to be quicker than the internet and probably more revolutionary than the internal combustion engine. And it goes way beyond energy. It gets into the spy tech as well. So if you wanted to live in interesting times, here we are.
Interesting you're saying this, John, because as you were discussing, I was thinking about electrolytic capacitors and compared to a flooded cell. Flooded cell meaning like the battery that you have under the hood of the car class. It's a flooded battery, meaning there's a liquid electrolyte, typically sulfuric acid, lead plates, and there are vent caps. So as the battery is charged and discharged, there's a chemical process that goes on, and there's some gassing. Gas comes out of the cells. A cell is there's 6 cells in a car battery. A battery is a group of cells linked together. So we call lots of things batteries when they may not be. We call a dry cell and a flashlight, we call that a battery. It's not. A battery is 2 or more cells. And some of them may be dry and some of them may be flooded or liquid. The ones under the hood of your car are typically a liquid flooded series of cells we call a battery. But they off-gas. And I was thinking about the electrolytic capacitors that we have in our solid-state electronics, like our CD players and our telephones and our computers and so forth. And they are sealed. They don't off-gas. And I was thinking about the heat buildup. There's generally heat involved in charging and discharging batteries. It's most assuredly in the charging process. But these capacitors, what a great idea, because it appears to me to be way, way, way more efficient. And the charging would be way faster, exactly what you're talking about. Just on the surface, John, it seems like a great idea. It really does.
And then you think about how they can use graphene to manufacture cars with that would make them significantly lighter but still stronger than steel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in order to make all this technology work, we just got to blow up a country or two?
Well, that's some of the other electronics. The graphene they're going to be producing from vegetable oil.
Yeah, but no, I'm talking about the electronics, so we can have better cell phones, things like that. So, what's taking out a couple countries just for all that benefit, Gosh, we've lost our minds. Captain John Regan, I'll be right back right after top there on news and commercial announcements. John, what's next? Hour number 2.
Got a lot of health information to discuss.
Yeah, here we go. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2. USApreparedness.com. Captain John Regan's with us. It's Monday. Captain John has put together a list on the website of links that you may want to consider trying and follow along in class or after class. Great reading, great insight, great information. Captain John Regan puts a lot of effort into his class preparation for Mondays, and today is no exception. Captain John Regan?
Well, and that's been part of my problem, too, is that the amount of time that goes into this 2-hour show consumes pretty much my waking hours, with the exception of a trip to the grocery store, a trip to church, and food prep and laundry. And I can't keep going that direction. And I'll see if I can jog your memory if you've been listening for a while. About a year ago, I talked about how we discovered, both Becky and myself had unexpected weight loss. And at the time, we couldn't do a whole lot about it and decided to start using liposomal vitamin C. And we didn't get too far into that before the ultrasonic cleaner we had stopped working. I did get a warranty replacement, but by the time that happened, if you remember, beginning of April last year, I was on with Hagman and Hagman, and 9 days later, Becky was fired. And I do believe it was related to my being on the show. And we were fortunate that she did find a temp job, which became permanent. And because of being across town, we also needed to move. So a lot of effort went into that. And then shortly after we moved, I got called on to speak at the Hear the Watchman conference in Knoxville, which had a total of 7 weeks preparation time for that. And then once I get back and somewhat recovered from that conference, I was called to speak at Hear the Watchman here in Dallas at the end of March. Now, I had told Vincent that when I went over there to take some handouts to be put into everybody's bag, the organizer, who I hadn't seen since Knoxville, made the comment, "You've lost weight." And that kind of took me by surprise because, honestly, I thought I was gaining weight. So the next morning, I hopped on the scale, and I was 349 and change. That was the first time I've been under 350 in some time. And I believe Becky weighed in at 338. And it's nice to lose weight, especially as overweight as we are. We've each gained over 100 pounds since we got married just over 25 years ago. And if there were some way I could package this no-effort weight loss, that would be a nice income source, I'm sure. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of things that cause unexpected weight loss, and most of them are cancer. I have not had a diagnosis. We really can't afford to see a doctor. Becky does have health insurance now, but if you're in that category, you understand that now the deductibles are so high that you can't afford to use your insurance, and we couldn't afford to put me on the insurance because that would take the rest of her paycheck. So we're having to do things outside of normal medicine, which would be doing anyway. I'm going to see if we can make a determination, and that gets into the first link there, order your own tests. And I'm working on an email to Dr. Shealy, because this would be more than what would be easily done calling in on air on Wednesday, to describe all the symptoms. And besides the unexpected weight loss, there's fatigue involved that is very reminiscent of when my mother had cancer in the last couple of years or so before she died. And the thing is I don't even know which test to order, so I'm wanting to get Dr. Shealy's opinion on what I should order to see if we can determine what it is. However, that's probably not going to change what we do about it. And a lot of what we're doing is things that Dr. Shealy has been talking about, the whole time he's been on USA Prepares, and many of those types of issues I didn't even put links up for today. He's talked about, vitamin D. He's talked about diet, not eating processed food, getting the wheat out. He's talked about exercise, and probably should have put a link up on this. with my back and Becky's knees, we can't even really go out and do walking, which is good exercise for you. However, you could search for this on Dr. McCullough's website on vibratory platforms. And if you want to go that route, you get a good workout in 10 minutes, but it needs to be a platform that has two motors because you need the up and down movement besides the side and side to side movement. And I'm still working on trying to find one of those machines, especially on the lower end of the price scale, because those get up over $1,000 rather quickly. Dr. Shealy also talks about far infrared, doing the sauna, make you sweat and get toxins out, because otherwise you're pretty much limited to what your liver, kidneys, and lungs can expel. By doing the sweating, that gives you another pathway, since the skin is your largest organ. That helps out. And I've found portable saunas, and because I'm kind of tall, I'm almost 6 foot, I have to get one that's a little bit bigger than normal. And then also in my research, I found that you need to look at the electromagnetic fields that this infrared device is putting out. Some put out some pretty bad fields. Others are low EMF. And if you want to go that route, that's something you need to be aware of too. Another thing that I've discovered lately that is not in this list is prebiotics. And what, I guess, let's talk about probiotics first. I think a lot of people understand that, where when you've had antibiotics, that destroys the bacteria in your gut, and your gut is probably about 80% of your immune system, and you have to replenish that. So typically what you would do is take probiotics to do that. Unfortunately, there's more to the story than just putting probiotics in. And that's where prebiotics come in. It's like if you were planting a tree and you decide not to give it any fertilizer or water, it's not going to stick around very long. And that's pretty much the same as it is with your gut flora, with all these bacteria. If you're not giving them the environment they need, they typically don't stick around long, or you're just having to continually replenish it, and then it's still not doing anything about the bad bacteria. So getting some good prebiotics helps that gut flora, and we could even take side trips into leaky gut syndrome, which we're not going to have time for today. So that's what's not on there. Like I said, I've put the first link up there because it's good for a number of things. You know, maybe you just want to check your vitamin D level, or see what your current panel is on fats and iron and everything else. And this gives you a way of ordering those tests yourself and going to a lab and getting your blood drawn and getting the results. But also on the website, and this is what the link goes directly to, if you do have symptoms, you can go in there, and it wants your age, whether you're male, female, what region you live in, and then what your symptoms are, and then it will give possible options, and that list also has links in it so you can research things further. So I've been able to go through and determine a lot of things that we're not experiencing, and then I just got to determine of what the other possibilities are, what tests we need to run, and at least we'll have a baseline to work with from that point. And I see we're getting close to the break. Did you want to ask anything at this point?
John, Mrs. Finelli saw that when I was returning to the studio at the top of the hour break, she saw kind of a somber mood. And she said, how are John and Becky? I said, well, we're going to be talking about that. And she said, she wants to cover the CA-125 test for you and Becky. So, if you decide that you'd like to have those tests, let us know. We'll make it happen. Captain John Regan's with us. I'm Vin Finelli. I'll be right back. Class, it doesn't happen very often, but it's happening right now. Vincent's at a loss for words. John, back to you.
Well, I've had a lot of time to go through this, and, I guess I should back up. I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV, but it's like you don't have to be a professional firefighter to know that when your neighbor's house is on fire, you might not know the best way of putting the fire out, but you may be able to identify some of what's going on. And what I've got in my list here for today is not designed to treat anything. What I have here are several items that have been shown to improve your immune system, and that's what I am focusing on at this point. I've got to make a lot of changes in my life, and one of which is I can't keep doing this weekly radio program and be able to take care of our health. And it's not like I'm going to just be going away. It's just I can't do what I've been doing these last 3.5 years. The time constraints are problematic. You don't make money being on radio unless you have another product behind you, and it's going to take both of those to work on what we need to work on. And I've got several plans already lined up here to work on this. In fact, one of the important things is finding good food, and we have found a local farm that's about an hour's drive away that we're able to get different in-season fruits and vegetables that they raise. And so we'll be getting local, fresh food. I've got to eliminate a lot of things out of the diet, much of what Dr. Shealy talks about. And for the time being, I'll be looking at not having a lot of meat, because that's where a lot of toxins come from, and what meat do would be things like organic pastured chicken, and also be looking at eating some good fish that would provide omega-3 fatty acids. Now, we've also talked about the environment, where we've got radiation and mercury and things like that have permeated the fish, but there's other things you can take to chelate that out. So if you take that pretty much the same time as you're doing fish, then you don't have to worry about that problem so much. So I've got to work on more time just getting the food part put together. We've been living with processed food that has to go out, and that requires just totally reworking things. Plus, it's going to take me longer to put together the meals because I've got to do more food preparation. I've also got to make money, so I'm doing a two-pronged effort on that. One, if you are on my EZE33.org website, there's a link for Get Mugged. And this is my first set of coffee mugs that I'm putting out. And it's part of a program. And I haven't had time to really work that side either, where I don't have just a few of these, I'll have eventually hundreds of options, and that'll be on Amazon and social media, and that's one source of income. And then the other side is I'm going to be looking at doing more in-person speaking or get paid to speak.
That's Captain John Regan's with us, and he's sharing some personal health information and some personal financial information. Nobody gets paid around here. All of us at USA Prepares, including myself, we're all volunteers. Nobody gets paid. And you would think that there's revenue from commercials. That's not the case. All of us here are volunteers and have been for many, many years. Maybe the model doesn't work. Maybe our model of volunteering and trying to share information, maybe it's flawed. It's a difficult model. There are no contracts. John Regan and I have signed nothing that says he's going to do what he does and I'm going to do what I do, and there are no contracts. It's just a bunch of guys and gals who think in a similar way, who've decided that we're going to share our experiences, our knowledge, candidly, openly, honestly, with no hidden agendas. And it's being laid out in front of you live, no safety net, unrehearsed, right now. And you've heard me ask infrequently, for those of you who are inclined to pray, that you add us. John?
Now, I want to say I'm not going away. I've got a YouTube channel that I'll let you know when I get the first video up in it, and that's going to be covering understanding large numbers. And you probably remember that night that I came to the meetup with my Legos to show what the D-Wave computer at that time, which was the 512 model, was capable of, at least in relative terms. And that's, like I've said, there's a lot of things that we either don't get to or really need some visual along with it. And I plan on putting that onto the YouTube as a front. The more detailed information, I'll be updating my Captain's Log USB drive. Plan on at least quarterly, if not more often, with more and more of these presentations that get into the depth that I just can't do any other way. I'm really actually rather excited about what's coming up because all the information that's been coming my way, especially this last 2 or 3 weeks, it's just been astounding for me. And I think I'm going to end up on the other side of this, or say we, Becky and me, that we're going to have a fantastic testimony. And I see this being as big, if not bigger, than what I put together for the Financial State of the Union. There's just that much to it. And I'm going to have to go through some of this rather quickly, but a lot of these things can be done relatively low cost or even free. Some start getting expensive. So let me just go ahead and start diving into it. You're probably familiar with green tea. It's purported to have several health benefits. Well, there's another form of that called matcha green tea. This uses the entire leaf. It's ground up rather fine, and it's got, it's got much more of what green tea has. In fact, the main antioxidant in it, I'll use the abbreviation EGCG. There's 137 times that in the matcha than in a conventional cup of green tea. And I have to, for time constraints, leave the rest of the article to you, but there's a biomedical researcher in there that talks about a lot of the benefits that's from their research. Now, if you're going to do the matcha green tea, I've got a batch coming to me this week. You want to get organic because it will pull in some toxins as well. You can search for reviews and things like that. And one of the things that you can look at is if it's more of a brownish color, that's a lower grade. You want something that's green. The lower grade tends not to taste too good. And you can find videos on YouTube how to go through mixing this up. You basically put it in a bowl, and the traditional way is using a bamboo whisk to mix it up and create a froth. At a lower cost than that even is broccoli sprouts. Broccoli contains a compound known as sulforaphane, and this is in a lot of different types of vegetables: broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, mustard greens, kale. But you can get a concentrated amount of this in broccoli sprouts. So it doesn't cost a whole lot to get the broccoli sprout seeds. Variety of ways you can do the sprouting, and to get the amount of this compound that you'd like if you're wanting to go after a bigger effect. If you're just doing it for health reasons, you can do a smaller amount, but it would be like 5 ounces a day, which would get a lot of good vegetable type product in your system, which you need to be doing anyway. The third item is, actually the fourth item is 3-day fast. Now, if you are healthy, this isn't a problem. If you have health issues, you may need to work with your doctor, especially if you have severe blood sugar issues. But the gist of this is that with a 3-day fast, it basically kickstarts your immune system, regenerating it entirely. So in the whole process of trying to boost your immune system, that's probably the top 3 ways of doing so. I recently, in fact, this past week, found a new method of making liposomal vitamin C. In fact, the way I was making it probably was more just an emulsion rather than liposomal. And I've got a link to about a 20-minute YouTube video where a doctor describes, actually goes through the whole method. That is about as close as you can get us home as they do in the industrial lab to make the liposomal vitamin C. The link below that is the PDF from that doctor that describes it written down, so you can print that out if you want to do that type of supplementation. And I do highly recommend that, because humans are one of the few animals that does not make their own vitamin C. It's critical for your health. Your skin is made out of it, your connective tissues. So just for normal living, you need a certain amount of this. And of course, if you get too little, you can come down with a condition known as scurvy. I do have to get a larger ultrasonic cleaner for this. It's a 6-liter model. And this takes about an hour to put it together, but you end up with a pretty large batch of liposomal product, and you get, according to this doctor, virtually 100% delivery to the cells. And in fact, it's so good, I'm looking at having to keep my current method of taking vitamin C just so that there's vitamin C available in the intercellular areas, not just the cellular inside the cells themselves. And depending on, again, whether you're just doing it for general health or if you have some condition you want to treat, would determine how much of this you want to take, and that gets way beyond even some of these videos, and that's where, again, you'd need to have a physician friendly with vitamin C give you some advice on that. The good thing about this is that you get basically the effects of intravenous vitamin C without the time and expense of the intravenous vitamin C. And given that we've all been irradiated by Fukushima, and I did not put that link up today either, researchers said that it's just the equivalent of a dental x-ray. And of course, we've talked about the difference between being exposed to radiation and inhaling or ingesting radiation. And that's why I think everybody would probably be wise to include liposomal vitamin C for probably the rest of their lives, considering Fukushima is not going away.
Class, if you'd like to see the link that Captain John Reagan's talking about, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com. Click on the news tab and you'll see how to make your own. Captain John Reagan's with us. John, please continue.
Well, it's 5 minutes. It's going to be fun trying to cover lectins, GCMAF, and it looks like a rerum, but it's actually rerum. Lectins are what plants use to protect themselves. They're kind of like natural insecticides. I've discovered a whole lot about this lately. They're not great for your gut. Between that and glyphosate, that's two of the reasons why wheat is not great for you. Lectins are especially concentrated in beans. So when you're doing your preps and you're doing these, beans and rice, which are inexpensive, you need to really pay attention to the preparation. You need to allow for proper soaking time. Otherwise, you're going to get a concentrated shot of lectins to your gut, and that's not something you need in a survival situation. With the rice, the problem is the arsenic, so you need to use water. Let that soak overnight as well and pour it off. So when you're doing your planning for water, you also need to allow for the soaking water you're going to need in addition to the cooking water you're going to need for your beans and rice. If you search, you'll find a show that Dr. Brower was on with Hagman and Hagman talking about GCMAF. And this was in the time frame when several of the naturopathic doctors were being killed. And we've talked about this a bit before. I've found this source here, which basically you create a yogurt out of the product and take it orally. The other option was doing injections or nebulizing it and inhaling. But I'm looking at this because it's less expensive than the injectable. The injectables, at the last time I checked, the exchange rate was $750 a vial. This is $450 for a 3-month supply for one person. And this gets the bacteria into your gut that produces the GCMAF. And GCMAF combines with vitamin D to really kickstart your immune system. But since all of us have been either taking antibiotics or exposed to it on our food, we have to replenish a lot of this. And I just found about Rerum this week. Now, this isn't cheap. It's $500 a vial, but this is taken orally. It's not subject to being digested by the stomach, so it passes through and gets into your system just fine. And apparently it's kind of like GCMAF on steroids. This is the active part of GCMAF that they've now isolated. Unfortunately, you have to order from overseas, but it is not a drug. It is a specialized form, and they even tell you what's in it. And again, this goes into kickstarting your immune system, so your body's own macrophages will take care of a lot of things. So much of our problem is malnutrition and toxins. So you work on proper nutrition, you work on getting the toxins out and giving your body, what it needs, and it does a fantastic job of healing itself. Vincent?
John, what you're saying is absolutely right. And I was thinking about my mom. My mom's still with us, lives here at the farm. She's the last one. All my aunts, uncles have all passed away, every one of them. And my mom was not the youngest, but my mom would eat broccoli. And when she cooked broccoli, she'd save the water and put it in the refrigerator and drink it as a beverage. My mom was a health food nut back in the 1960s, 1950s. And she avoided the toxins of smoking and drinking and, those kinds of things. Doesn't drink soda. She's doing really well. John Regan, you're absolutely right. I want to thank you for being with us and sharing your information for years. Looking forward to being back on the air with you really soon. Thank you, my friend.